Oh, happy days. It's Saturday. It's Hollywood Balls. It's Soccer Saturday. We've got a special for you. We've got Ref Watch. We've got our friend, our very dear friend, Keith Hackett, who's joining us today. Gosh, we've got so much to get into. There's people flying in through the front doors already. You'll be waiting for this one. This was all down to Super Kev, a great idea of his because it's a constant topic of conversation. And we had the FA Cup last weekend, which didn't have VAR, which gave us a chance to sort of rekindle the passion of football. We're going to get into it. So welcome to Soccer Saturday. Okay, big warm welcome to everyone. Before we get stuck in, gents, there's a couple of little bits that I want to do. Big thanks to everyone that watched last week, Kev. It was great to be back on. And so many messages through the week as well, including, we've got a massive African fan base. And I just wanted to pop this photo up from one of our regular viewers and give him a quick shout out in action. A fantastic picture there. Looks like a midfield maestro. Kev, that's our very own Salisa Musa, who watches us every week on Hollywood Balls. Yeah, and he's in action there for Adawama United, the Nigerian second division. He sent me that in. So thanks for joining us. Great to have you. Going well in the second division. So we wish him and his team well. A big warm welcome to you, Keith, and a happy new year.
Thank you.
Desperate to get into this. Great. But before we do, you two, I've got a little bit of a surprise for you because football, I was just saying this week, football throws up so many memories, conundrums, ties. Now, I'm going to cast you both back to 34 years ago today, and I'm going to show you something, right? Both of you were in action 34 years ago today. Have a look at this.
Number 7 is Ramsey. McAllister. Campbell with the touch. Oh, and a bad back pass there, and they've scored! Oh, tragedy for Newcastle. Scorer Tommy Wright. But what a bad back pass that was from Kevin Scott. Although I think it was impeded by the referee. Have a look at it again. Campbell laying it off there, yes, and the referee stopped Scott getting to the ball. But he'd made his mind up he was going to pass it back.
Kevin Campbell, Keith Hackett 1-2 at St James's Park.
Oh, yellow card for me. Yellow card for me. Do you know one of the big challenges that people forget in refereeing is that we have to read the game. And as we go up the ladder, the skill sets of players are much improved. As a result of that, trying to anticipate what their next move is going to be is part of the referee's, if you like, criteria of operation. I misread that and got completely in the way.
But what you did do, Keith, the first goal that Mark McGee scored, it was a tough one because it was a tough call for you, and I do believe that you didn't have the old goal line technology then because Mark McGee's header was over, but it took 3 or 4 views for the fans to see, but you called it instantly, so I think it balanced itself out.
Yeah,
but what I love,
that was Pete.
It was Roy Aitken's debut.
Aitken's debut at the Gallagher end was open. There was no roof.
Yeah,
it was 34 years today, and both of our guests today were involved. An absolutely brilliant football memory that comes full circle. Yeah. So
amazing,
great. Now listen, we are here for a reason, and of course, it's to talk about our beloved game. So we've got a host of things to get through. There's people flying in through the doors. Terry's with us, Thomason, Glenn's with us. So any just fire your questions in. The Everton
Pete,
fan advisory board. Yeah, go for it, Kev.
Because Terry T. Finnegan on Twitter X, he put a lovely video together. I'm sure, Keith, you watched it. I watched it because I copied you in. And Evertonians, everywhere I go, I'm pitch side tomorrow at the Aston Villa game. Everywhere I go, Evertonians say, why is it that we have not had a penalty? in 2023, 24? Why is it that a man has never been sent off against us, even when it's been totally blatant? You saw Dominic Calvert-Lewin get sent off the other day, which shouldn't have been sent off, and then they've rescinded it, but he's still on his record. So if he gets booked again, he's gonna. I mean, Evertonians always ask me, Kev, speak for us, speak to us. So I'll ask you, Keith, and I'm not saying it's all on your shoulders, but
I mean,
you've seen the videos, it's crazy.
Well, let's get to the Calvert-Lewin situation first of all. I mean, that is a very, very poor red card. You know, the guy's gone for the ball. There is great doubt as to whether there's contact. The guy on field, the referee in a very good position, determines it's not a foul. Then all of a sudden, those people at Stockley Park have got to justify their position and suddenly start to get interfere. Now, it seems to me, I mean, they've obviously rescinded the red card. It shouldn't have been applied in the first place. It could have impacted on the game result. It didn't. But I just want referees to think a little bit more, because the last thing they should be thinking about is dismissing a player. You as a referee, I think they need to think this is a failure of man management, and sometimes a failure of not being able to see an incident and deal with it accordingly. Calvert-Lewin, rightly, his red card was rescinded. I'm bemused by the fact that they've held that on his record, because ultimately, at the end of the day, I would ask Everton as a club to further appeal that situation and seek clarification on behalf of the player. Now, when it comes to decisions, the last 2 seasons, there's lots of clubs that have had some pretty awful calls. Everton must be up there near the top. And I don't know why that is. I mean, look, I have to tell you, the pleasure of refereeing big clubs, you know, the fact that you were going to Merseyside and you're driving on the M62 and you're going, wow, really looking forward to this game, because you know the atmosphere is brilliant. You know the fans treat you with respect. They certainly treated me with respect. They might argue about a decision afterwards, but then they go on your way, and that was it. There was no threats. It was all done in a nice manner. And I just feel sorry that we're getting these decisions across the board that are awful. I can't justify them as a referee. They're poor application in law. But then on the other side of it, you know, when we look at yellow cards, in my era as the boss of the referees, I went in and the yellow card count was near 5. And I said to the referees, we're going to bring sports psychologists in. We're going to improve the man management between player and referee. We're actually going to introduce a panel of former players and managers to assess your performance. And what that did, I think, was put some balance into how they manage games. We got the yellow card count down to 3. Now, part of that, Kevin, was the reaction of players. Players, there wasn't as much diving. We got in a way, we got rid of a bit of that. Yeah. And we got a better reaction in terms of dissent, because we said, look, the captain can approach us. He can say what he likes, really. Yeah. He has no authority in the laws, but he can talk to us. So we gained a better man management, a better working relationship on the field of play. What have we got now? We've gone from the 3 average yellow cards. We're now 4.7, and I'm sorry to go down the stats route, but our top referee, the guy who's had most appointments, Anthony Taylor, he's had 15 games in the Premier League season today. He's issued 2 reds, 81 yellow cards. So he's on 5.4 yellow cards a game. Now, if I was his boss, and I'm not, I'd be having a 1-to-1, because this is a guy, let me tell you, who can communicate and communicate well. He was a prison officer. He had to communicate in prisons with people. That's part of the role. So why has he suddenly gone to a guy who goes 2/3 of the game with no yellow cards, And then all of a sudden, up here, suddenly starts handing them out like confetti. That's where the boss of the PGMOL, Howard Webb, should come in and go, you're a mature referee, you're well respected, you've had the World Cups, you've done some wonderful things. Just relax a bit. But I think there's a fear factor running through these guys in not wanting to make a mistake. And you know, Kevin, as a former player, none of us want to make mistakes, referees or players. But the game is influenced.
Yeah.
Players make mistakes, referees make mistakes. What we have to do is bin them and get on with it. But to answer your question, I mean, I think when you look at the Calvert-Lewin situation, I worry about the basic law interpretation, because out came a quick statement from the PGMOL saying he's been sent off for serious foul play. Now, I think I know a little bit about the laws of the game. And I can tell you that the serious foul criteria talks about excessive force, and it also talks about brutality in that challenge. There was neither. The player was making a genuine attempt to play the ball. He might have caught the player. That is football. And I don't know what's happening to our referees. I think there's a lack of leadership. There's a lack of coaching. And it seems to me that they've locked themselves into a room and they've stopped looking at the game as a whole and understanding this is about entertainment. This is like the producer of a theatre show coming in and saying to the singer, whoever it is, you're hitting bum notes, mate, you're off. You don't do that. The producer sits out and makes certain the show is the right thing. Referees, I think, have to understand at the elite level that this is about players and not referees. And they also want to say, I'm going in today, as I used to. I knew I'd got Wimbledon. I knew they were a difficult team to referee. We all knew that. We knew that John Fashanu could put it about. Sanchez was the guy who would dip them in off the ball and all that goes with it. You got to know your players. And I just wondered at whether, I mean, with all the time they've got as professional referees, they're not doing the homework. And I think that, let me give you an example. I might have mentioned this before. If we looked at the team sheet and Paul Gascoigne was in the bench, we knew that every minute of that game taking part, Gascoigne was getting wound up, frustrated, not happy. His frustration was growing. So when he came on for a number of games, he was on within a minute. He's got a yellow card. He's either hit somebody, said something, or whatever. Right? He's getting rid of his frustrations. We recognize that as referees. And so when he's coming on, we run alongside him and we go, what's your manager thinking about not having you on the field, Gaza?
Yeah.
Best player in the world and you're not on the field, mate. Look, don't act daft. Just calm down a bit. I'm really pleased that you're here. And I think some of that man management that is part of the process of the game. If you're in love with the game, which I am as a referee, you know, when I walked across that white line, wherever it was, and I looked across that field and I looked at all them players, and I went, "How lucky am I?"
Heaven, innit, Keith? Heaven.
How lucky am I to be running alongside these players and watching them play? And the most I earned, and people don't believe this, the most I earned from a game was 35 quid. And I know that the game's changed. I know finances have changed. I was at the forefront of wanting professional referees. And the reason behind that was I lost my job. I was appointed to New Zealand versus Australia in a World Cup game. I went out to Auckland. The company had given me permission. And then I was suddenly informed that I'd taken leave without absence, and I was going to get a warning. And they said to me, you're going to serve a week's notice, a week's sort of suspension. And I went, get lost, and left the job.
Yeah.
And you know, for that game, you didn't get a fee. So I went all the way to New Zealand to referee a football match with no fee. The expenses were paid from home, Sheffield, to Manchester Airport. That was it. So what I'm trying to say is, in the reason behind professional refereeing is because the game was getting quicker. We needed the refereeing standards to improve. And we need them to actually be able to understand the game more by bringing managers in and talking to them, having a better mix out on the field of play. And I worry because, if you like, the personality of referees that I run the line to, the George Courtney, Trevor Simpson, who sadly passed away a couple of days ago, Pat Partridge, Jack Taylor, all these guys, they knew their position in the game. They knew that they weren't there for the entertainment or being the star of the show. They were there to let the players express themselves.
Fascinating. Listen, Keith, we've got so many people flying in through the doors that we've got to say hi to, and they've got questions as well. Of course, they have. It's a show we've been building up to all week. We spoke to Keith early last week, and we were so excited to have it revisited. I've got to say some highs. Paul Foster's with us, Glenn Stidolf as well. James Buckley is in the house. I'm going to come to Glenn's point because it leads into my next point for Keith. It's regarding the FA Cup weekend. Paul Foster says, with Chris Kavanagh often in a central role, too many poor decisions for Everton. Is it possible that you drop him from future Everton games? Is that looked at, Keith? If there's a particular referee that it says that there seems to be some sort of dissent with a certain club, is that ever sort of covered?
I think that when you have a referee that's had a game that's created conflict, it's stupid, isn't it, to then say, well, he's going to referee there next week.
Yep.
I have to say very clearly that referees will make mistakes, but I, at the same time, would say, in defence of the referee, I would say, look, you've had a pretty poor game. They didn't like that. You've had a poor game. You've made a big mistake here. Next week, you're sitting on your hands. And the reason I'm doing that is you're going to get some operational advice. I'm not going to put you out on the big games. So what happened to Kavanagh was, he made that mistake, and then all of a sudden he's got two big games. Newcastle, he's out in the middle, and you suddenly go, that can't be right. One of the things that happens is that with referees is during the course of the game, you make an error, you file and forget. You don't let that impact on your performance. But if you don't review your games in detail and factor in that you have made an error, how have you made that error, discuss it, and then not have it as baggage in future games. So for me, I'm clear. The standards have to be met. And if the standards aren't met in a performance, then that game is dropped. Now, I would suggest that I wouldn't be putting Kavanagh there at Everton for a few weeks, and the next time he refereed Everton, he'd be away from home. It wouldn't be at Goodison Park. So I think that's management of it's not shying away.
Is that just common sense, Keith?
Well, I sometimes look at it and I think to myself, if you operate the PGMOL management as though you're the manager of a football club, right? Kevin might be hitting the back of the net, and I'll tell you, when I go into that room and I'm doing the squad for next week and the tactics for next week, is top of the list, and the shape of the next game is going to be influenced by his position and what he's doing. He's in form, get him in the team. If Kevin goes through a dip in form, I might be persuaded to keep him in the game for a bit, but he's not going to be. I might change his mode of operation, but then I might say to him, Kevin, I'm giving you a couple of weeks off. Go and see a bit of the sun. Get your batteries recharged. And I think to some degree, in football, and particularly at the elite level of any sports person, the people that are managing them, and this is why you have sports scientists, you have to recognize that you might not be physically tired, but you can be mentally tired. And therefore you bring them out of the game. And I just, you know, you look at Newcastle's performances in recent weeks, you know that some of those players are physically tired and mentally tired. And that's why you have a big squad in order to bring other fresh faces in. It's no different with refereeing. But what we've got is, you know, we look at Cavana. Cavana has had 12 games. Michael Oliver has 13. Tell me that Cavana and Oliver are on the same level as a performing referee. Absolutely not.
Yeah.
You know?
And you've sent me that list, which I'm going to get into, because there's a fascinating point of, so, you know, there's Darren England's, there's your Bramos, you know, Madley, Harrington, all on single games, and then you go up Taylor, Jones, Oliver, all on 15, 13 and 14. What I wanted to ask you though, Keith, and it's a point that Glenn's brought up as well. We talked about it before I hit the live button. FA Cup last weekend, and it sort of restored a bit of fun to the game. The games flowed. There was controversy, of course there was, but like I said to you, and Glenn's saying there, look, it was a proper game. There was no VAR. There was some dodgy decisions, but people just got on with it, didn't they? And it all made for a more enjoyable afternoon of cup football.
Do you know what it said to me? And listen, I'm a guy that brought in communication kits, goal line technology, Pro Zone, in terms of statistics and monitoring, polar heart monitors, sports science, sports psychologists, all those things. Let me tell you, at the moment, VAR and how it is being operated, not the system, how it's being operated is damaging the game. And if those people in power, having watched the FA Cup last week, don't realise that a move has to be made, a serious move that says, PGMOL, if you don't get this right, in the next 2 or 3 months, next season, the Premier League will operate without VAR, because I think it's impacting so negatively on our game. It's actually impacting because we're going, football is an art. Yes, it involves sciences for sure, but it's about passion. And you know, I sat in a stadium a few months back, and there was a controversial incident, and I called it right. Look, I was not being clever. I said it was a penalty. It took us 3 minutes to get to a penalty kick decision, and the fans were around. And then a goal was scored a bit later on in the game, and we sat around, and even the players are not actually celebrating it. And I'm thinking, I'm watching grassroots football and I'm enjoying it because I can have a pint and sit and watch the players. I can listen to the banter of everybody. Yeah. And I just think VAR is taking too much away from the game. It's not actually improved the performance levels of referees, because referees have become lazy. And to get back to the answer, I watched David Coote. I watched David Coote referee in the Premier League. He's hesitant. He's looking around. He's often, at times, like a lot of referees, looking at the ball. And, you know, I'll say the ball never commits an offence. Players commit offences. And they're ball watching. And they're not making decisions. I watched David Coote last week. And I'm going, this is a different guy. This is the guy who I used to know at Football League level, applying advantages, keeping the game flowing, allowing the players to express themselves, making the odd mistake, quite right. But nobody was moaning. And then I think one of the commentators said, oh, the referee's David Coote. And we were about 3/4 into the match when they mentioned the name of the referee. So for me, I think it was a picture of where we want the FA Cup to be and the passion that extols. And we just want VAR to be less dominant in our game. And you know, I pick the papers up. It's every week. I look at the media, the questions I'm being asked, it's about VAR. It's not about this player making these wonderful goals and the great play that's going on, because the skill sets that we're seeing out on the football field are wonderful to watch. And you just say, that's what we need to be talking about.
Interesting. Kev, I've got a point for you. And it's something that's cropped up on our show before. You know, we always ask you about your memories being on the pitch. And it's a question that, again, I do it with all due respect to referees, but it's something that's cropped up a lot this week on my messages as well. As a player, I mean, and Keith sort of hinted at it there, that, you know, you would open up dialogue with referees and you would chat to them. In your day, I know that you did that. I know that the referee would say, Campbell, stop it, you know, get on with the game. And there was a lot less of that then. Do you think now, though, that some of the referees are more, it is about them, that, you know, there's a bit about their I don't know, their persona and their profile.
Profile.
Yeah.
Profile. Back in the day, and Keith could answer this as well. Back in the day, the best referees were the ones that you never really saw. You knew you looked at who the referee was. You went out there and you played the game. The referee wasn't prominent in the game. If a decision needed to be made, they'll make it. If a player had done something wrong, they dealt with it. But the referee, most of the time in those big games or any game, was anonymous. They let the game flow. Now, for a player to have a relationship with a referee, you go on the pitch, you speak to the referee. I've got to say, in my career, I was lucky. I think that era, Keith and all these guys were the best around at this time. So you could speak to them, and like you saw at the start of the show there, Pete, that was me on loan at Leicester. Keith was the referee. So as I'm starting to come through the ranks, Keith came through the ranks as well. So you've got kind of a rapport. How you doing, Keith? You okay? Blah, blah, blah. Yeah. But you still know, if I step out of line, Pete, he's going to have me. Do you know what I mean? But that's the respect. I think there's a severe lack of respect between referees and players. Yeah. And here's one thing I will say and ask Keith, because we know that the game has changed, so people keep telling me. I don't think it's changed that much. It maybe got a bit quicker and the pitches are better, facilities are better, but I don't think it's changed that much. No. The decisions that are being made have bigger consequences solely because there's more money in the game. I get that. But I've got to ask Keith this. If VAR was brought in to help the referee get the decisions right, how can, if you've got, and people always tell me, it's not the VAR, it's the people, it's the whole process. It's the whole process. VAR is one thing. So how can you, for instance, that incident like yesterday or previously, or, you know, the Liverpool goal against Spurs, or you could look across the whole season. Every team's had it. Yeah. How can VAR not get it right when they've got the technology and they've got the people to help the referee?
I think if we had the answer to that, then I think we'd have VAR operating really well. Let me tell you, I think we need to make change. I want you to think that you're sitting in a cinema or people listening to this show, and suddenly you switch off. You close down for a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. Your audience is going for a cup of tea now, and they might be switching off and leaving you because they've now lost the thread of what's happening or what's being discussed. VAR is the same. What we've got is we've got to think about the fans. We think about the players, which is important, the game as a whole. But we're in the entertainment business. And what we're doing is we're impairing that entertainment because we're switching the game off. And the fan in the stadium hasn't got a clue what's going off. And therefore, you're giving them 2 or 3 minutes to think about it. I've refereed thousands of games. And let me tell you, my mode of operation was clear. Don't get involved. If it's iffy, don't get involved. Just get the game played on. And it's amazing, by applying the game and the advantage and keeping the momentum in the game, keeping out of it, allowing the players to express themselves, you'd come off and you'd think, I could have done better. But people think, oh, he's had a good game because you've kept that low profile. And I think that what we've got is we've got a system where it promotes inside the stadium doubt, because all of a sudden we've got players scoring goals and then suddenly stopping and thinking, oh, what's next? Guys who are scoring goals.
And then the fans don't know what's going on. The fans don't know what's going on.
They haven't got a clue. They haven't got a clue. We've then got the guy who's taken all the credit for scoring a goal, and we have 3 people sitting somewhere in a room saying, actually, he's not scored. It's Fred Smith, the defender. And we take the glory off the players. And this is what VAR's doing. And then, in a way, look, it's influencing the game in the wrong manner. So for me, I've said it from day one. It has to be in the big screen on the inside the stadium, part of the entertainment. If we're going to have VAR, let us all listen into what the referee's saying. Let us understand what's being said. We might still disagree, but we're part of the process. If I'm sat there and I'm having my enjoyment impaired, the number of people who say to me, I know the stadiums are still full. I know it will always fill them for the next 10 years at the Premier League level. But there are people who are core supporters that I know are suddenly saying, I'm actually not going to the Premier League. And I see it because I'll stand at the fence this afternoon watching an amateur, a semi-pro game, and people are there, and you suddenly go, no, I'm not going to the pro game. I want it as I see it here. And I think football's got to have a wake-up call and get the VAR system working. The only way they're going to do that, let me tell you what I think needs to be done. One, the semi-automated system for offside needs to come in, because that speeds up the process of the position. The second bit is the big screen. There's no question we've got to have the big screen, or we've got to have the referee making the decision, stood out in the middle of the pitch like the rugby guy does, watching it on the big screen. We've then got to have, seriously, the right people in the VAR panel. And that, you know, the game will not like it. The authorities don't like what I say.
Go on, Keith, say it, Keith, say it.
The panel have got to be a mix of people. They've got to be a mix. I would have 3 people. I'd have 3 people in the VAR. One would be a player, and one a referee, and one an assistant referee. They'd be the 3. And I would expect, as I've seen work, you know, I've watched games. I've then gone in and listened to what the match delegate has said. Kenny Hibbert, we all know Kenny Hibbert, right? Debriefing a referee. It's enlightening. And I'm thinking, I wish I had that as our referee. And I'm then coming away thinking, I thought of that. I had that idea to introduce people like Kenny Hibbert. Dennis Smith. You wouldn't get anywhere near Dennis Smith. He'd cut you at the hip. But here he is telling a referee how he can improve his performance. So if those guys can do it at the assessment level, right, and ex-managers as well, that okay, the late John Duncan and others, if they can do it at that level, then they can go to Stockley Park for me. But I won't have Stockley Park. I'd close it down. Yeah. You know, they've just spent £1 million on Stockley Park, decorating it and making it more comfortable. Why?
And they can't get it right. I mean,
let's take Stockley Park, and let's take you as an ex-player, George Courtney as an ex-referee, and an assistant referee, whoever it is. You're at that ground. You're at Everton. You're at Goodison Park. You're operating in a room with the cameras and the feed into your room, right? The door's locked. You can have a cup of coffee at half time. You can have what you like, but you've walked on the pitch.
yeah.
You've got the feel
Got
for
the
the
atmosphere.
game.
Yeah.
And then what you do is this. When the manager comes in, as I said he could do 30 minutes after the match, knock on the door, ask the referee anything that you want. When that manager comes in the door, Sean Dyche, and says, can you tell me why Calvert-Lewin has been sent off? And he looks at you, Kevin, because you're there, and he looks at George Courtney because he's the referee, and he looks at the match officials that have refereed the match, and he says, I expect an answer.
Of course.
And I bet he gets an answer. Because the answer would be, you would say, Kevin, that's not a red card.
100%.
And George Courtney would say, that's not a red card. And see how it's so important to have, when you're making critical decisions, either the man in the middle takes the can for it and he makes the right call, or if he's getting advice, it's the best advice. And at the moment, he's not getting the best advice. He's getting
George,
referees who are not good communicators.
Keith, one of the guys in chat, George, has made some good comments as well regarding, we're saying the game has changed, but maybe we need to look at the way it's been done in Europe as opposed to England. And we tend to have a different look and feel of how we do it in England. Why?
Well, I think that's a good point. I think the first point is we've got to recognise that there are 55 nations in Europe, and we're seeing the very best referees in UEFA that they can come up with. So we're now getting on to another topic, Kevin, and this is it. Do we, if we were in charge of the Premier League at this moment in time, and we were witnessing standards of refereeing that are not up to the best, so we bring players in from overseas to challenge you as a player, so why don't you bring referees in to challenge the referees? So why don't you say, well, he's the number one referee in the world, we've got the number one league, why don't we bring him in? Why don't we're talking about the PGMOL spend £26 million a year, right? Don't tell me that you cannot afford to bring in the top referees to do the games. It's interesting, isn't it? There's Michael Oliver going out to Saudi to referee their top game, but we won't do it here in England. I think sometimes the PGMOL have done daft things. By the way, I did think about Kalina when I was the boss of the PGMOL, but again, I was shouted down by the FA, who looked upon it with a lot of disdain, and almost admitting a guilt. But see, what I did was, when I took refereeing over, I said, "Who's the best refereeing in the world? Who's the best referee in the world?" It was Kalina.
Yeah. And
so I benchmarked everything that Kalina did. I looked at him. I analysed through Prozone his performance. He was doing 11.5 to 12,000 meters per game. Our referees were doing about 9.5, 10. Fitness coach came in. Sports science. Our average went to 11,500 meters. 1,000 meters at 7 meters per second, which is the speed at which Thierry Henry ran with the ball. I wanted our referees to do the same. We were doing 25 sprints a game. Kalina was doing 50. When I left it, our referees were averaging 50 sprints. So it says that if you wanted to bring in the best, then why be fearful of not doing that? Why have a closed shop?
Yeah.
Interesting.
But Pete, can I just add to that?
Of course.
Why would the PGMOL, etc., be so reluctant to put ex-players in Stockley Park, Keith?
There's an arrogance running through the game, isn't there? You know, this is a little bit. This is our game.
Yeah.
You know, when I used to go into Europe, I used like Hauness. I'd refereed Hauness. He was a German player, wasn't he? The next time he'd retired from football. The next time I see him, he was like CEO of a football club. He didn't go through the process. He was put in at the very highest level of administration of running a football club. Where do we see that in England? Where you know, where do we actually see that progression of a player or someone that's been really good in the game getting a role around the board table? There's not enough. It's our game. This is where I think the game could learn a lot more from American sports and other sports around the world in that sense, the management and structure of it. The PGMOL, I said this week, it's like a boys' club running Mayfair, and I thought very seriously before I said that. Because I made it on the comment of they'd taken all the PA benefit of bringing Sam Allison in, saying history is broken. He's the first black player, black referee to referee for 15 years. Why? Why is that the case? When I left the PGMOL, I had a number of black referees that were in a position to be able to advance, right? So that was a concern that wasn't happening, having managed very effectively Uriah Rennie, who had a great personality, a terrific referee.
Yeah.
So then we have Rebecca Welsh, and there's this great cascade of information that says, oh, we're bringing a woman referee. It's brilliant. That if she's good enough, get her to referee. I have no issues with that. She referees the game at Fulham. The management of Fulham say she's had a very good game. The media said she's had a good game. Sam Allison, I know he'd refereed Sheffield United, Luton, and the local papers and the media were saying, phew, refreshing, had a really good game. I'm sitting waiting for these guys to have another Premier League game.
Yeah.
Don't do the PR bit. Now, they've responded, because I said that. They're running it like a Mayfair club. They're taking all the best bits and then... And somebody came back, the PGMOL come back and said, well, actually, Rebecca's refereed Bournemouth against QPR in the FA Cup. Fine, that's the FA Cup. I made reference to the Premier League.
Premier League.
So I do think that people think I've got a chip on my shoulder because I'm making these negative comments about the PGMOL. They were not in those conversations at day one where I was putting forward the idea of professional referee and the need for professional referee. Neither were they in discussions with me and US Soccer and the MLS about introducing professional referees into the MLS. Mm-hmm. And it's amazing that pro referee in America that was managed by Peter Walton and then followed up by Howard Webb is operating much better than here in England. And, you know, Howard has openly brought in the review of the VAR system and allowed us to listen in. Too selective.
Yeah.
You know, if we're going to have that show, what I'd really like is I'd like the audience to come in and say, will you show me that Calvert-Lewin thing and tell me why he's got a red card in the first place and why it's been overturned? What are you doing, Howard? What are you doing?
Because open up the audio there. Yeah.
Open it up. Let's say, right, okay, you know, the systems are there. You know that. The systems are. Let's say, what are the ones that the fans are really concerned about? Let them have their say. And if that's a 1 hour show, rather than this manufactured performance at the moment, to me, to you, and it's all to a script.
Yeah.
I didn't ask you for questions. I don't go on a script. I talk passionately about the game. I want the standard of refereeing to improve, because as it does, the game itself becomes better as a product. And, you know, we've got players. What do the authorities need to say? 198 games, 934 yellow cards. They've not caught on to the fact that players have been suspended earlier this season than last, because there's more yellow cards being issued out.
Yeah.
That's the impact. And would you want, you know, you've paid a ticket to watch the very best, and all of a sudden somebody comes along and says, oh, by the way, sorry, this week, Bruce Springsteen cannot appear because he's been suspended for getting 5 yellow cards. We're in the entertainment business.
Entertainment.
Football is competing with the likes of Springsteen, the Rolling Stones, the theatre, the films. And we have the best players playing in our game around the world. Whatever you say, the mix is brilliant. The games are great. And what are we talking about week in, week out? Referees and VAR.
It's all VAR. It's all VAR, referees, VAR. And as well, Keith, it's not cheap to go to football anymore. All the guys who go, and they go home and away, and the fixtures get changed around, etc. And you go to these places, you spend a fortune, and then you're waiting on VAR to determine whether your team sometimes win or lose. To me, for me, I would bin it until they get it right.
Well, I've said that.
Got it right. Yeah.
I'm on the same page as you. You know, the one thing I want to say very clearly is that people have criticised me because when I'm saying these things about referees and decisions, I am not questioning the integrity of the referee. I'm not questioning that. We have a brilliant group of honest officials. It is in their interest, it's in the PGMOL's interest to improve their performance. You know, we've got too many second division referees playing in the Premier League. And, you know, looking at that, we've got Graham Scott. He's been paid 100 grand a year as a professional referee. He's had 2 games this year. Is he injured? No, because he's refereeing the Championship. So the reality is, I'm the manager and you're the player, and you've only had 2 games this season. It's January. I'm saying to you, Kevin, I'm selling you on, mate.
Yeah.
And I would be saying to that referee, you're not hitting the standards of my expectations. Here's a 1 year's salary for you. Go and do other things.
All the best. Yeah.
And I think there's too many referees here in this lot. I mean, you know, David Coote, right? I think he had a very good game in the FA Cup. He's only had 8 games. He's had 7 less than Anthony Taylor.
He's had 3 reds in those 8 as well, Keith.
There you go.
He's itching to get out, isn't he? He's itching.
Well, I mean, you look. I mean, they brought a young referee on in England. His average yellow cards is 6.3 a game. You know, Coote is 5.
Yeah, they've got high averages.
Well, you can make statistics however you want, but the basis here is this. Think about when you put your hand in your pocket and you're going to produce a yellow card. If we continue issuing yellow cards at the rate that we're doing, all we're doing is reducing the value of the yellow card in putting a check and balance into that player. You know, I used to go to referees, to players, and they were probably losing a bit of self-discipline themselves, getting a bit naughty. And I'd run alongside them and say, hey, I need a bit of improvement. Check yourself. Just be careful what you're doing. Give yourself a breath. I'd then run alongside the captain and say, look, that Kevin Campbell, that player
Have a
there,
word, yeah.
you need a word with him. Just quieten him down a bit. And then do you know what I'd do? Instead of him running into me at Leicester, I'd be somewhere else on the pitch. There'd be about 30 yards all the time between me and Kevin Campbell. Because if I entered his space, he's still annoyed with me.
Yeah, of course.
He still wants to go at me. And therefore, it's common sense, isn't it, what I'm saying?
Take yourself out. You take yourself
That's
out of the
what's-
firing line, don't you? That's
what's coming.
But what we
That's
get,
what's coming
Kevin, is this. We get the guy arguing with the referee, and the referee, instead of getting his backside out of the way, wants to confront it.
Yeah.
And all
There's only one winner.
Yeah. All he do, where you go and you go. Just
listen, guys. I mean, we're literally flying through this, and we've got to end off with our predictions as we always do to readdress the balance, to have a little bit of fun towards the end of the show. But I do want to end on this because it goes back to something Hilsey said on one of the comments previously, and we've looked at the referees, we've looked at VAR. I just want to end very quickly with both of you, because Kev, you've played the game and obviously at the highest level, and Keith refed at the highest level. So what about this? The players have a responsibility as well. We've spent the last 50 minutes caning the system and a few of the referees as well, rightly so. But let's shift the gears a bit. If you mentioned there, Keith, I'll come to you first, Rebecca Welsh. I mean, if they're good enough, exactly, and that we have talented referees. But do you believe that having more female referees could enhance a little more player respect on the pitch?
That may be the case. I think that it doesn't matter about the gender of the referee. I think it is more about, one, what the authorities do in terms of, and this is about encouraging managers to have words with their own players for ducking and diving. Because, you know, I can get into the playing zone. I can say, look, we're seeing too much play acting. You know, we're actually within those yellow cards. There are a number of incidents, a fairly high number of incidents, where a player has actually taken a course of action to get his opponent a yellow card. And I think that is another aspect of the game that I'm unhappy about. I've talked about refereeing, but I can also talk about the management of players and their responsibility to the image of the game and their requirement of improving their behaviour. And you know, we know about the touch and the player rolling down, but I'm seeing too many players feigning injury as though they've been shot, getting their opponent
yelling
into trouble and yellow carded.
And also this new, is it a new thing, Kev? This yelling as they go down so everyone can hear it next to the mics?
Oh, it's you mean the drama, the dramatics, amateur dramatics.
The EastEnders and Coronation Street.
Yeah, look.
Yeah.
Players do have to play their part. You're right, Pete. Keith, you're right. Players do have to play their part. But you know what? I've got to say this. Having been involved in football for such a long time and been refereed by the best, what used to happen before games, the manager would come in and he'll see who the referee is. And he'll say to the team, it's Keith Hackett today, lads, be on your best behavior. Because if you step out of line, you know what's coming. So the refs had some power.
Yeah.
You know, to influence how you behaved on the pitch. If you were a nobody, if you were a new guy, then it's up to the referee, maybe, because I've been captain. Lucky enough, I've been captain where you take the team sheets in and you speak to the ref. That's where the new referees make their mark.
Yes.
They've got to say to the ref, they've got to say to the manager and the captain, look, I'm new here, but I'm not going to take no nonsense. If there's a problem, you come to me, but I'm going to referee this game in a certain way, Then we'll go back to the dressing room and then we'll start telling the team, listen, don't mess with this new referee. He's a new one, but he's going to have us if we step out of line. I think for whatever reason, the empowerment of the referee has gone, maybe because of VAR. I think the refs need to get it back, Keith.
Yeah, well, I'm in agreement. I think the other side of it is we're seeing too much of the referees. I tell you a story. I was running the line at Leeds United versus Arsenal. Jack Taylor was the referee. Just before half time, I flagged a couple of occasions for fouls. There were fouls. I go into the dressing room at half time thinking I've done a good job here. I've not been involved too much, but I've got these 2 free kicks spot on. And we're having a cup of tea. And Jack Taylor turns to me and says, Keith, are you enjoying it? Yeah. Thought you were a bit busy. Thought you were a bit busy. And, you know, what that said to me was, think a little deeper about not me and me seeing a foul and giving it. What were the consequences of Jack having to blow for that free kick? Because when I reviewed it on Match of the Day, which they showed, both stopped Jack from actually applying an advantage. I'd stopped the game with my flag because the players had stopped, right? And you suddenly go, what sound advice? And I just think that, you know, you can come off and the player might say to you, I think that was a crap decision you've made there, Keith. And you say, well, you've missed the net on a couple of occasions. This is the game. You're right. I think it's respect. I think it's a working relationship. I do think VAR, and this is why I'm saying if you don't improve it and you don't make those changes, perhaps that I'm recommending and others might recommend, then we're going to lose the game that we love, and we're beginning to lose it.
We're losing it now, yeah.
And I think that, you know, we've got so many quality players playing football, so many brilliant goalkeepers that we really ought to be saying there are other things to talk about rather than VAR, but we're not.
Well, you'd say that. Listen to this. We got through a quarter of our agenda today, and all of the messages are basically saying, "Keith, can you come back on?" So we will arrange that. But what I do want to do is we've got a couple of minutes left. So there's a shortage of Premier League games on this weekend, Kev. So that suits our purpose. Literally 4 games. So what I'm going to do is, and if you guys are still with us, hit the messages as well and join in, because we're just going to have a little bit of predictions for fun. Although it's never fun with KC around, is it? We'll go with you first, Kev. Chelsea Fulham. Give us a prediction because it's coming up soon.
Yeah, Chelsea Fulham. I'm going to go 2 each.
Oh,
2-2. Desmond.
Goals galore. Yeah, it's a derby as well, isn't it? Literally on each other's one end of the King's Road to the other. West London derby. Keith, what have you got for us? What do you think today?
Oh, well, I was going to go for a draw, 1-1.
Yep. Okay, good stuff. I've got a draw as well. I think there'll be goals. I tend to sway with Kev. I think that Chelsea. Everyone says, "Oh, Chelsea, they found a bit of form," and then they have a footy result. Fulham a footy team as well. So looking forward to that one. All the Georgie best later on. It's Newcastle against Manchester City. Apart from the cup, they've got a terrible record against City in the league, Kev, which is no great shame because most teams have. City, of course, Kevin De Bruyne is back today. Of course, he's looking the best he's ever looked in his life to come to St James's Park. What you got for us?
Sorry, Pete, I've got 3-1 City.
Yeah. I can't see past it. Can you, Keith?
I can't see past a City win, 2-1.
2-1. Yeah, I think the cup game came at a good time for Newcastle. They got a little bit of confidence up. The only thing they can possibly look at is, they say, Eddie Howe said it yesterday as well, Haaland's not playing. Is that a good thing? They've still got 10 other players that can score a couple of goals.
But only got Alvarez.
Yeah, they haven't had a great time themselves, Kevin. If Newcastle get at it early doors, there could be a score draw opportunity on, but I tend to side with you. The game you're doing tomorrow.
No, what are you saying, Pete? What are you saying?
Ones each.
I'll
go ones each.
Yep.
Yeah. Kev, you've got the game tomorrow. You're on the telly box, and a great game it is as well. Everton, a lot of Everton fans on here, obviously, to see you today. Everton Villa.
Listen, I'm going to go 2-1 Everton. Everton back at home. Hopefully Dukes will be back, and I think Villa have done fantastically well this season. But I think Everton need to win this game, because there's obviously, because of what happened last night, there's a bit more pressure on Everton now, isn't there? So Everton need to get a win, and I think they'll sneak this 2-1, Pete.
Great comment. In keeping with our discussion today, my only prediction for AFC and Villa is David Coop will probably be bloody awful. Good stuff. Keith, have you got a score of Everton Villa for us?
I think both teams are finding form. So for me, it's a 2-2 draw.
Desmond.
Okay. Sorry, Evertonians, but I think I like the look of Villa this season. I love Unai Emery. I think he's great. I'll go 2-1 to the Villa. And then last up, great game of old. Again, another team that I can't really work out. I said to one Man United fan this week, for me, Eric Ten Hag, Kev, what he's failed to do is give Man United an identity, a DNA, in my opinion. You never know which Man United's turning up. So Man U Spurs.
Oof, tough game. There's never an easy game at Man U, especially for the London boys. That's for sure. I'm going to go 2-1 Man United.
2-1 Man United. Yeah, you can't take Spurs, can you?
I could take Spurs, but I know, listen, up here in Manchester, they're Man United fans. Listen, they want the blood of the Londoners, mate. So I think they're going to go for it.
Our beloved George has got Spurs 4, Man United. Can you imagine George watching that? Can you imagine George watching that game? He's got Man United 3, Spurs 4.
Oh, no.
Mind George can't cope with a 0-0 draw. Never mind a 7-goal thriller. Keith, what have you got for us, Man United Spurs?
Yeah, I think Spurs under this new managers have got quite shrewd. I'm going to go for a draw, 1-1.
Good stuff. I fancy goals. I'm going to go all out for a 3-3 draw. A super Sunday. Last word with Hillsy there. He's got Man United 8-0. That's it. No, just brilliant stuff. As I said, listen, Keith, we've got so many comments and queries that have come through. So what we will do, we'll put you on the spot and ask you if you would come back on soon, and we can continue our ref watch, and hopefully people will be listening to what's been said today. And the resounding phrase for me as host is, it's common sense. All that Keith and Kevin have said today is common sense. Let's adapt it to the game that we all love. Listen, we've ran over an hour. We could probably do another 2 or 3 hours. It's been absolutely fantastic having everyone's company. And whoever your team is this weekend, we wish you all of the very best and have a great and safe weekend.
Thank you for your time.
Keith,
Thank you.
It's been an absolute pleasure, and we'll get you on hopefully really soon. Super Kev, great to see you. And no doubt we'll be on the WhatsApps as the goals fly in on this Soccer Saturday.